The night I watched my wife with another man on camera, I didn't scream or break things. I sat in my home office with a glass of scotch and took notes like I was reviewing blueprints at work. That's the kind of person I am. Rodrik Hansen, 36, structural engineer. I solve problems with math and patience, not tantrums. But sitting there at 2 a.m, watching Margaret's pale back arch on my computer screen while some stranger grunted behind her, I felt something cold settle into my chest. Something that would stay there for months. I'd installed the camera 3 weeks earlier, tucked inside the smoke detector above our bed. $29 on Amazon. The suspicions had been building since summer. Margaret coming home later from the bakery, always with her phone face down on the table. New underwear I'd never seen. She'd started drinking more too, wine with dinner becoming wine before dinner, then wine instead of dinner. The man in the video was lean and tattooed, maybe early 30s. He kissed her neck the way I used to, back when she still wanted me to. I watched them for 11 minutes before I closed the laptop. I finished my scotch and poured another. The smart move was obvious. Document everything, build an airtight case, then divorce her cleanly and move on with my life. I had the evidence. I had financial records showing I'd been the sole provider for our 8-year marriage while she played with pastries and apparently this tattooed asshole. But I didn't want clean. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. I saved the video file to 3 separate drives. One encrypted USB stick went into my safety deposit box at the bank. Another went to my office, hidden in a drawer full of old project files. The third stayed on my laptop, password protected with a 16-character randomized string. Then I went to bed in the guest room. Margaret didn't even notice I wasn't beside her. She came home after midnight, drunk and stumbling, and passed out in our bed without checking on me. I lay awake in the dark, listening to her snore, thinking about all the nights she'd done this before, all the times I'd believed her excuses about working late or having drinks with coworkers. How long had I been this stupid? Monday morning, I called my sister Hannah from the parking lot at work. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. "You sound weird," she said. Hannah's a psychologist, which means she notices everything. "What's wrong?" "Margaret's having an affair." Silence stretched between us. I could hear traffic in the background on her end. She was probably between patients. "Are you sure?" she asked finally. "Video evidence. In our bed." "Jesus, Rodrik, I'm so sorry." Her voice shifted into therapist mode, careful and measured. "Have you confronted her?" "No." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But I need to think clearly, and I need you to help me do that." "Okay. Let me check my schedule. Can you meet for lunch?" We met at a diner near her office in Richmond. Hannah was already in a booth when I arrived, still wearing her work clothes, a navy blazer and slacks. She'd ordered coffee for both of us. I sat down and laid out what I knew, which wasn't much beyond the affair itself. She pushed her salad around her plate while I talked, her dark eyes studying me with that clinical assessment she couldn't turn off even with family. "You need a lawyer," she said when I finished. "A good one. This is going to get ugly." "I know. And Rodrik, don't do anything stupid. I know you're angry, but—" "I'm not angry," I said, and I meant it. The anger had burned out somewhere around 4 a.m, replaced by something colder, clearer. "I'm just done." "That's what worries me," Hannah said. "When you get that calm, that detached, it usually means you're planning something." "I'm planning to protect myself, that's all." She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. We finished lunch, and she hugged me in the parking lot, holding on longer than usual. "Call me," she said. "Don't go through this alone." "I won't." I went back to work and designed load-bearing calculations for a hospital expansion like nothing had happened. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't cheat. Numbers made sense in a way that people never did. At home that night, Margaret heated up leftover pasta and talked about a difficult customer at the bakery who demanded a refund for a wedding cake that was exactly what she'd ordered. Some people just want to complain, Margaret said, refilling her wine glass for the second time. Like we spent hours on that cake. It was beautiful, but she said the roses were the wrong shade of pink. That sounds frustrating, I said. It was. My boss was ready to tell her to leave, but I kept it professional. Gave her a 20% refund just to make her go away. She talked for 20 more minutes about work drama, while I nodded in the right places and asked the occasional question. She had no idea. No idea that I knew. No idea what was coming. No idea that every word out of her mouth was being recorded by the voice-activated recorder I'd hidden in the kitchen light fixture. I was documenting everything now. Every conversation, every movement, every lie. The next morning, I hired a private investigator named Dale Hutchins. 50 years old, former cop, came recommended by Tom, my best friend who worked in sales and seemed to know everyone in Virginia. Dale's office was in a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a vape shop. The waiting area smelled like stale coffee and cigarette smoke, even though there was a no-smoking sign on the wall. Dale himself was exactly what I'd expected. Thick around the middle, wearing khakis and a wrinkled button-down shirt, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's worst behavior. Tom says you need help with a domestic situation, Dale said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair across from his cluttered desk. My wife is having an affair. I need everything on the other man. I slid him a screenshot from the video, cropped to show only the man's face. Name, address, employment, criminal history if he has one. And I need to know how long this has been going on. Dale studied the photo, then looked up at me. The wife? Yes. You want surveillance? Whatever it takes. I need a complete picture. He quoted me $3,000 for 2 weeks of work. I wrote him a check for $1,500 up front without hesitation. You're taking this pretty calm, Dale observed. I'm an engineer. I solve problems methodically. Most guys come in here either crying or ready to commit murder. I'm neither. That's good. Makes my job easier. He tucked the check into a drawer. I'll call you in a few days with preliminary findings. Probably have everything you need by the end of next week. Tom called that night while I was eating dinner alone. Margaret had texted to say she was working late again. Dale's good people, Tom said. He'll get you what you need. How are you holding up? Fine. That's nonsense, but all right. If you need anything, just call me. Beer, a couch to crash on, or someone to help you move her stuff to the curb. Thanks, Tom. I'm serious. Don't go dark on me. I know how you get when you're working through something. You turn into a robot. I'll call if I need anything. You better. At home, Margaret came in after 10, already drunk, and headed straight upstairs without saying hello. I heard her in the bedroom, talking on the phone in a low voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. The camera would catch everything. I waited until she passed out, then checked the footage on my laptop. The tattooed man had been there that afternoon. They'd been in my bed for almost 2 hours. The camera had captured everything in high definition. I made detailed notes, date, time, duration. I was building a timeline, a case file. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about documentation. Dale called on Friday with preliminary information. I was in my office at work reviewing stress calculations for a bridge project when my phone buzzed. Got a name for you, Dale said. Miguel Ortega, 32 years old, works construction, mostly day labor, under the table stuff. And Rodrik, he's got a record. I felt my pulse quicken, but my voice stayed level. What kind of record? Theft. Broke into a warehouse 3 years ago. Stole tools and copper wire. Did 18 months in Greensville Correctional. Got out about 3 years ago. Been mostly clean since, far as I can tell, but he's got serious debt. What kind of debt? Credit cards, medical bills, couple of payday loans. I'm still pulling records, but it looks like he's north of $40,000 in the hole, making minimum payments when he can, defaulting when he can't. Something clicked in my head, a pattern emerging from the data. How much does he make doing day labor? Probably around 35,000 a year, in cash, so he's likely not declaring all of it. He lives in a rundown apartment in Southside and drives a decade-old truck that barely works. So, he's desperate. Yeah, I'd say so. Why? Just thinking through the possibilities. Keep digging. I want to know everything about this guy. You got it. I'll have a full report by end of next week. I hung up and stared at my computer screen without seeing it. The picture was getting clearer. Margaret wasn't just bored or unhappy. She'd found someone who needed her, or at least needed what she could provide. Access to money, to stability, to a life better than the one he had. And Miguel wasn't just some random guy she'd met at a bar. He was calculating. He saw an opportunity. That meant this wasn't just an affair. This was something more dangerous. I spent the weekend moving money. I had accounts Margaret didn't know about, something I'd set up years ago, not because I anticipated this, but because my father had drilled into me the importance of keeping some assets separate, just in case. The house was in my name only. We'd bought it before we got married, and I'd kept it that way. The cars were in my name. Margaret had access to one joint checking account with maybe $8,000 in it, which I kept topped off for household expenses. Everything else, my retirement accounts, my investment portfolio, the savings account with 6 figures, was mine alone. I transferred another $20,000 from the joint account into my private savings, leaving just enough to avoid triggering any alerts. If Margaret noticed, I'd say it was for the hospital project, that I needed liquid assets for unexpected costs. She wouldn't notice. She never paid attention to money beyond knowing the credit cards worked when she wanted something. Hannah called on Saturday morning. I was in the garage, organizing tools I didn't need to organize, just needing something to do with my hands. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Really?" "I'm okay. I've hired an investigator. I'm building a case for divorce." "That's good. That's smart. But Rodrik, how are you doing emotionally?" "I told you, I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody would be fine after finding out their wife is cheating." "Then I guess I'm not nobody." She sighed. "You're doing that thing where you compartmentalize everything, where you turn off your emotions and just focus on solving the problem." "That's how I handle things, Hannah. You know that." "I do, and I'm worried about it. Because one day, all those emotions you're not processing are going to come out, and it's not going to be pretty. I'll deal with that when it happens. Promise me you'll talk to someone. A therapist, not just me." "I promise." I didn't mean it, but it made her feel better. 2 weeks later, Dale delivered his full report. We met at a coffee shop near my office, both of us ordering black coffee and sitting in a corner booth away from the other customers. The report was thorough. Photos, timestamps, license plate numbers. Miguel Ortega had been seeing Margaret for 4 months, since late June. They'd met at a bar called Murphy's downtown. Margaret had gone there with coworkers after work one Friday, and Miguel had been there with friends. They'd exchanged numbers, started texting, and within 2 weeks they were meeting at hotels. Then they'd gotten bold and started meeting at my house. Dale had photos of Miguel's truck in my driveway on 7 different occasions over the past 2 weeks alone. He had photos of them at restaurants, at a park, at Miguel's apartment. He had their text messages. He'd managed to pull Margaret's phone records through a contact at the cell company. The messages were explicit, intimate, romantic, sometimes talking about me. "He doesn't even notice I'm gone," Margaret had written. "He's so wrapped up in his work, I could disappear for days and he wouldn't care." "Then leave him," Miguel had written back. "Be with me." "I will, soon. I just need to figure out the money situation." That's where it got interesting. "There's something else," Dale said, sliding another set of documents across the table. "I listened in on a conversation they had at a coffee shop 3 days ago, used a directional mic from my car. They were talking about money. Specifically, your money." I read through the transcript. Miguel had been pushing Margaret, asking detailed questions about my income, my assets, what kind of savings we had. He'd mentioned something about making sure she got her fair share when they divorced. But then the conversation had taken a darker turn. "What if we make sure you get more than half?" Miguel had said. "How?" Margaret had asked. "You tell the cops he hit you. Get a restraining order, get him out of the house. Then you file for divorce and emergency support. Judge will side with you, especially if you've got proof he's abusive." "But he's never hit me." "Doesn't matter. You just need to make it look like he did." There was a long pause in the transcript. "I don't know if I can do that," Margaret had said. "You want to spend the rest of your life with him? Or you want to be with me?" "You. Then this is what we have to do." I read through the transcript twice, my coffee growing cold in my hand. "They're planning to set you up," Dale said. "I'd bet money on it. Probably within the next few weeks, she's going to come at you with some kind of accusation related to your relationship. Can you keep monitoring them?" "Yeah. You want me to?" "I need to know when they're going to do it. I need advance warning." Dale nodded slowly. "You got a plan?" "I'm working on one." I called Patricia Goldman that afternoon. She was a divorce attorney with a reputation for being ruthless and expensive. Her office was in downtown Richmond, all glass and steel and modern art. Patricia herself was in her 50s, sharp-featured, wearing a gray suit that probably cost more than my car payment. She listened while I explained the situation, then reviewed the video evidence and Dale's report. "This is excellent documentation," she said. "With this evidence, she won't see a penny in spousal support. Virginia is technically a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still matters for the financial aspects. The house is yours, the cars are yours, and based on these financial records, most of the assets are in your name only. What about the accusation related to your relationship? If she files a false report, that's a crime. Filing a false police report, fraud, potentially conspiracy if her boyfriend is involved. You could press charges. What if I let her do it?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? What if I let her file the false report, let her go through with the accusation and then prove it's fake? Wouldn't that be better for my case?" "It would be dangerous. If you're arrested, you'll have a record. Even if the charges are dropped, it could affect your employment, your reputation. But if I can prove it's false, definitively, then she goes to jail, and I get everything." Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me. "You're talking about letting yourself be arrested and potentially prosecuted just to make sure your wife faces criminal charges. I'm talking about making sure the truth comes out in the most undeniable way possible. That's incredibly risky. I'm an engineer. I calculate risk for a living. This is manageable." She thought about it for a long moment. "If you're serious about this, you need to be prepared. You need to have all your evidence ready to go the moment you're arrested. You need bail money. You need to be absolutely certain that your evidence is solid and admissible in court." "I am. Then I'll prepare for that possibility. But Rodrik? I strongly advise against this course of action." Noted. At home, Margaret's drinking continued to worsen. She'd come home around 7, already tipsy, and polish off a bottle of wine by 10. We barely spoke anymore. I'd moved permanently into the guest room, claiming I was snoring too much and didn't want to disturb her. She hadn't questioned it. Probably relieved to have the bed to herself, to have the freedom to text Miguel all night without worrying about me seeing. I kept working, kept documenting, kept waiting. October came. The leaves turned brilliant red and gold, then brown, then fell. Margaret spent more time with Miguel, less time pretending our marriage existed. Some nights she didn't come home at all, texting me that she was staying at a girlfriend's place. I knew she was at Miguel's apartment. Dale had confirmed it. I kept recording everything. I had dozens of videos now, hours of audio. I had financial records showing every dollar I'd earned and every dollar she'd spent. I had text messages, photos, timestamps. I had everything. Then on a Wednesday night in late October, everything accelerated. I was in my office, reviewing blueprints for a shopping center renovation, when I heard Margaret come home. She was on her phone, her voice sharp and slurred. "I can't just accuse him of something, Miguel. That's insane." I minimized my work and opened the audio monitoring software on my laptop. "No, I know we need money, but yes, I understand that you're drowning in debt, but fine. Fine. We'll talk about it tomorrow." She hung up. I heard the clink of a wine bottle against a glass. I sat there in the dark, listening to her pace around the kitchen, muttering to herself. Then she made another call. "Mom? Hey, no, I'm fine. I think I'm going to leave Rodrik. Yeah, soon. I don't know, maybe next week." She talked to her mother for 20 more minutes, painting a picture of me as cold and distant, emotionally unavailable, focused only on work. None of it was technically false, but the way she framed it made me sound abusive. She was laying groundwork, building a narrative. The next night, Dale called with an urgent update. "You need to hear this," he said. "I've got Miguel on tape, talking to Margaret outside the bakery. Audio is crystal clear. He's pushing hard. Says they need to do this soon, before you figure out what's going on and file for divorce first. Send me the audio. Already in your email. But Rodrik, this is happening, probably within the next week. You need to decide what you're going to do." I listened to the audio recording 3 times. Miguel's voice was insistent, aggressive. "You tell him you want a divorce," Miguel said. "Then the next day, you call the cops and say he hit you. We'll make some marks on your face, make it look real. Cops will arrest him. You'll get a restraining order, and boom, he's out of the house and you're in control." "What if they don't believe me?" Margaret asked. She sounded scared. "They will. They always believe the woman in these situations, especially if you've got visible injuries." "I don't know if I can do this." "You want to be stuck with nothing? Then we do this. Next Friday. You tell him Thursday night you want a divorce, let him think about it overnight, then Friday morning we make it happen." "Okay," Margaret said quietly. "Okay." I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. There it was. The timeline, the plan, everything I needed. I had 6 days to prepare. I spent the next week getting everything in order. I met with Patricia and gave her copies of all my evidence. I set up bail money with my bank. I told Hannah what was about to happen, and she'd been horrified but agreed to help if I needed her. Tom thought I was crazy but said he'd be there for me regardless. "You're playing with fire," he'd said over beers at his place. "What if something goes wrong?" "It won't. I have video of them planning it, audio of them discussing it, timestamps that prove I wasn't even in the house when they stage it." "You hope? What if the recordings don't work?" "Then I'll deal with it. But I need to do this, Tom." He'd shaken his head, but raised his beer. "To the most calculated revenge I've ever seen." Thursday night came. I got home from work at 6 to find Margaret in the kitchen, drinking wine and staring at her phone. She looked up when I walked in, and something in her eyes was different. Harder. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About us. About this marriage. I can't do this anymore, Rodrik." I set down my briefcase. "Okay, what do you want to do?" "I want a divorce." I nodded slowly. "If that's what you want." "That's it? No fight? No begging me to stay?" "Would it matter?" She looked away. "No, I guess not." "Then there's nothing to fight about. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, and we can figure out the details this weekend." I turned to leave. "Rodrik?" I stopped. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help, but I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't sorry. She was performing, playing the role of the reluctant wife who'd been driven away by a cold, distant husband, setting up her narrative. "Sure, Margaret, I'm sure you are." I went upstairs and waited. At 11:30, I heard her on the phone with Miguel. The camera in the smoke detector caught every word. He didn't even react. Just said okay, like I told him I was going to the store. No, I know. Tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I can't tonight. I've had too much wine. It needs to look real. Yes, I remember. The bruises need to be fresh. Okay. I love you too. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from anticipation. The next morning, Saturday, I got up early and went for a run. When I came back, Margaret was making coffee, still in her bathrobe. She looked nervous. Morning, I said. Morning. I showered and dressed, then went to the garage to work on my car. Just normal Saturday things. Around noon, I heard Miguel's truck pull up. I stayed in the garage, listening. They were in the kitchen. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. Has to be today, Miguel said. Before he files first. I know. I don't know if I can do this. You want to be stuck with nothing? Then we do this. You call the cops, tell them he hit you, show them the marks. Simple. There was a long silence. Okay, Margaret said finally. Okay. I heard movement, footsteps going upstairs, then I heard a slap, then another. Margaret cried out. Harder, Miguel said. It needs to look real. Another slap. Margaret was crying now, but they were fake tears. Rehearsed. I went back to the garage and waited. 20 minutes later, Margaret came out. Her cheek was red, her eye slightly swollen. She'd done a good job. She got in her car and drove off. Miguel left a few minutes later. I went inside and checked the cameras. I had everything. The conversation, the planning, Miguel hitting her, all of it. An hour later, 2 police officers knocked on my door. Rodrik Hansen? Yes. We need you to come with us. Your wife has filed a complaint alleging domestic assault. I looked at them calmly. I understand. Can I lock up the house first? Make it quick. I went inside, grabbed my phone and wallet, and came back out. They put me in handcuffs, read me my rights, and drove me to the station. In the interrogation room, Detective Mark Carter sat across from me. 45, graying hair, tired eyes. He had a folder in front of him with photos of Margaret's face. Your wife says you hit her this morning during an argument about divorce. She's got visible injuries. Want to tell me your side? I didn't touch her, I said. She's got a bruise on her cheek and a swollen eye. How'd she get those? I don't know. But it wasn't from me. Carter leaned back. I've been doing this a long time. Domestic cases are always messy. But the evidence is pretty clear here. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe things got heated, and you didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't touch her, I repeated. And I have evidence to prove it. What kind of evidence? Video. Audio. Proof that she and her boyfriend staged this whole thing to frame me. Carter's expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of interest. You got this evidence with you? It's at my house, and with my lawyer. If you charge me, you'll see it in court. We're charging you, assault and battery. You'll be arraigned Monday morning. I nodded. Then I hope your department has a good lawyer, because when this is over, you're going to wish you'd checked her story first. Carter studied me for a long moment. You seem pretty calm for someone looking at assault charges. I'm an engineer, detective. I deal in facts and evidence, and the facts are on my side. They processed me, took my mugshot, and put me in a holding cell. I called Patricia Goldman from the jail phone. They arrested me, I said. Domestic assault, fake charges. Margaret and her boyfriend staged it. Do you have evidence? Hours of it. Video, audio, everything. Good. I'll get you out on bail tomorrow. Monday morning, we go to arraignment and we bury her. I spent the night in jail. It wasn't comfortable, but I'd slept in worse places. Sunday afternoon, Patricia posted my bail. $10,000. I walked out of the courthouse into cold November sunshine. We need to prep for tomorrow, Patricia said. I want to see everything you've got. We went to her office. I showed her the videos, the audio recordings, the timestamps, everything. She watched Miguel hit Margaret while Margaret asked him to hit her harder. She listened to them plan the fake assault. She saw the footage from earlier that morning, showing me in the garage while they were upstairs staging the abuse. When it was done, Patricia sat back in her chair. "This is the most open and shut case I've ever seen. They're going to prison." "What about the arraignment?" "We'll enter a not guilty plea. The prosecutor will see the evidence and they'll drop the charges. Then we file for divorce, and we go after both of them for fraud, false reporting, and anything else we can make stick." "What about Miguel?" "He's criminally liable. Conspiracy to file a false report, witness tampering, assault on Margaret. Even if she consents, hitting someone to fake injuries for a false police report is still assault. He's looking at real time." I nodded. Good. Monday morning, I put on my best suit and met Patricia at the courthouse. Margaret was there with a lawyer I didn't recognize, cheap suit, nervous energy. Miguel wasn't with her, probably smart enough to stay away. The arraignment was quick. The prosecutor read the charges. Patricia entered my not guilty plea. Then she stood up. "Your Honor, defense would like to submit evidence that these charges are fraudulent. We have video and audio recordings showing that the alleged victim and her boyfriend staged the assault to frame my client." The prosecutor looked confused. The judge looked annoyed. "Approach," the judge said. Patricia and the prosecutor went to the bench. Patricia showed them something on her tablet. I watched their faces change. The prosecutor went pale. The judge's jaw tightened. They talked for 5 minutes in low voices. Then Patricia came back. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Hansen, in light of new evidence, all charges are dismissed. You're free to go." Then he looked at the prosecutor. "I want a full investigation into these allegations. If Mrs. Hansen filed a false report, I want her charged." Margaret stood up, her face white. "That's not... I didn't..." Her lawyer grabbed her arm and pulled her back down. We left the courtroom. In the hallway, Margaret tried to approach me, but Patricia stepped between us. "Don't," Patricia said. "Anything you say to my client can and will be used against you." "Rodrik, please, I can explain." "I hope your lawyer will protect you," I said. It was the only thing I wanted to say to her, the only thing she deserved. Her face crumpled. "Please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry." "You're sorry you got caught." I walked away. The criminal charges against Margaret came fast. The prosecutor, embarrassed by almost putting an innocent man in jail, went after her hard, filing a false police report, fraud, conspiracy. Miguel got hit with the same charges, plus assault for hitting Margaret even though she'd asked him to. The trial was set for January. In the meantime, Patricia filed for divorce. No fault, but citing adultery as grounds for denying spousal support. Margaret tried to fight it, but her new lawyer, a public defender, could barely keep up. The discovery process was brutal for her. Patricia demanded everything: phone records, bank statements, text messages, and because Margaret had filed a police report, all the evidence I'd gathered was now part of the criminal case, which meant it was public record. The video of Margaret and Miguel planning the fake assault made the local news. Her bakery fired her immediately. Miguel lost his construction job. They were both toxic, unemployable. Hannah called me every few days to check in. "How are you feeling about all this?" "Relieved." "Not angry? Not sad?" "No. Should I be?" "Most people would be." "I'm not most people." Tom was more supportive. She got what she deserved. Both of them did. The trial started on January 8th, cold, gray Monday. I sat in the courtroom gallery while the prosecutor laid out the case. The jury looked skeptical at first, a woman accusing her husband of abuse. Who wouldn't believe that? But then they showed the video. 12 people watched Miguel hit Margaret while she told him to hit her harder. 12 people heard them plan how to frame me. 12 people saw Margaret practice crying in the mirror before driving to the police station. The defense had nothing. Margaret's lawyer tried to argue that she'd been manipulated by Miguel, that she was a victim of his coercion. But the video showed her as a willing participant. She'd come up with half the plan herself. Miguel's lawyer tried to claim he'd been protecting Margaret from me, that he'd only gone along with the plan because he thought I was actually abusive. But the prosecutor shredded that argument. If he'd really thought I was abusive, why not call the police with real evidence? Why stage an assault? The motive was clear. Money. Miguel was drowning in debt. Margaret wanted out of our marriage, and together they'd concocted a scheme to frame me and take everything I had. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecution rested on Wednesday. The defense put on their witnesses on Thursday, character witnesses for both defendants, a psychologist talking about coercive relationships, Miguel's friends testifying that he was a good guy who'd just made a mistake. None of it mattered. The evidence was too strong. Closing arguments were Friday morning. The prosecutor was methodical and devastating, walking the jury through the evidence one more time, making it crystal clear that both defendants had knowingly and willfully conspired to file a false police report and commit fraud. The jury got the case at noon on Friday. They deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all counts, both defendants. Margaret sobbed when the verdict was read. Miguel just sat there, stone-faced, staring at nothing. Sentencing was set for February 14th, Valentine's Day. The divorce went through in March. Margaret got nothing. No spousal support, no share of the house, no claim to any of my retirement accounts or investments. She got to keep her car and whatever personal items she could prove were hers. Everything else was mine. Sentencing day was cold and bright. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery. Hannah sat next to me, quiet support. Tom couldn't make it, sales conference in Atlanta, but he'd called that morning to wish me luck. Margaret and Miguel were brought in separately. They weren't allowed to sit together or communicate. Margaret looked small in her orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. Miguel looked angry, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the room like he was looking for an escape. The judge entered, and we all stood. "Be seated," Judge Carol Brennan said. She was 60, gray-haired, with a reputation for being fair but harsh on people who wasted the court's time. "We're here for sentencing in the matter of the Commonwealth versus Margaret Hansen and Miguel Ortega. I've reviewed the pre-sentencing reports, the victim impact statements, and all relevant case materials." She looked at Margaret first. "Mrs. Hansen, you have been found guilty of submitting a false police report, conspiring to commit fraud, and obstructing justice. These are serious offenses that weaken the trust in our legal system and harm genuine victims of domestic abuse. When individuals like you make false claims, it makes it more difficult for true victims to be taken seriously." Margaret started crying. Real tears this time. "However, I also note that you have no prior criminal history and that you appear to have been influenced by your co-defendant. That said, you are an adult who made your own choices. You could have walked away at any time. You didn't." Judge Brennan looked down at her papers. "I hereby sentence you to 3 years in prison with credit for time served. You will also pay restitution to Mr. Hansen for legal fees and damages in the amount of $75,000. After your release, you will serve 2 years of supervised probation." Margaret collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her lawyer patted her shoulder awkwardly. The judge turned to Miguel. "Mr. Ortega, you orchestrated this scheme. You manipulated Mrs. Hansen. You physically assaulted her to create false evidence, and you attempted to destroy an innocent man's life for financial gain. You also have a prior felony conviction for theft, which shows a pattern of behavior." Miguel stared straight ahead, his face blank. "I hereby sentence you to 5 years in prison with credit for time served. You will pay restitution jointly with Mrs. Hansen." After your release, you will serve 3 years of supervised probation, and you are permanently banned from contacting Mr. Hansen or any member of his family." Miguel's jaw twitched, but he didn't react otherwise. "This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. I sat there for a moment, watching as the bailiffs led them away. Margaret looked back once, her eyes finding mine. I didn't look away. I wanted her to see that I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no pity, just emptiness where she used to be. Hannah touched my arm. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." We walked out of the courthouse together. The winter sun was bright, reflecting off the snow in the parking lot. I took a deep breath of cold air and felt something loosen in my chest. "What now?" Hannah asked. "Now I go back to work, back to my life." "That's it? That's it?" She studied my face. "You're really okay with this? No regrets?" "None." "Not even about the marriage? About the years you spent with her?" I thought about that. 8 years, most of my 30s. Time I'd never get back. "No," I said finally, "because now I know exactly who she was, and I know I did everything right. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't make mistakes. I just waited, and I let her destroy herself." Hannah nodded slowly. "That's very cold, Rodrik." "Maybe, but it's honest." We reached our cars. She hugged me, holding on longer than usual. "Call me if you need anything," she said, "even just to talk." "I will." I drove home to my empty house. It was quiet, clean, mine. I poured a scotch and sat in my office, looking at the space where the computer had been the night I'd first watched the video. That felt like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. "Heard the news. Drinks on me when I get back. Proud of you, man." I smiled and set the phone down. The house was quiet. No sound of Margaret coming home drunk. No lies, no pretending. Just silence and peace. I finished my scotch and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run. The sun was rising, painting the snow orange and pink. My breath fogged in the cold air. My feet pounded the pavement in a steady rhythm. At work, I reviewed the hospital expansion plans and caught an error in the foundation calculations that would have caused major problems down the line. I fixed it, saved the file, and moved on to the next project. Life went on. 3 months later, the divorce was ancient history. Margaret was in prison. Miguel was in prison. I'd paid off Patricia's fees with the money I'd kept in those separate accounts. The house was refinanced in my name only. Everything was clean. Hannah invited me to dinner one Saturday. She'd been seeing someone new, a teacher named Sarah, and wanted me to meet her. "You seem different," Sarah said over dessert. "Lighter." "I feel lighter," I said. "Hannah told me what happened. I'm sorry you went through that." "Don't be. It worked out." Later, driving home, I thought about that. It had worked out. Not the way I'd imagined my life going 10 years ago, but maybe better. I was free. I was clear. I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. And what I wanted was simple: honesty, peace, and a life built on something real. I pulled into my driveway and looked at my house. The lights were off. No one was waiting inside. No drama, no lies, no betrayal. Just me. And that was enough. Spring came slowly that year. The trees budded reluctantly, as if unsure whether winter was truly over. I refinanced the house completely, removing every trace of Margaret's name from the paperwork. Changed the locks. Repainted the bedroom a different color. Bought new furniture. Slowly, methodically, I erased her from my space. Tom invited me to a barbecue in April. His girlfriend Rachel was there, along with a dozen other people I didn't know. Normal people having normal conversations about work and movies and vacation plans. I stood by the grill with a beer in my hand, listening to Tom tell a story about a disastrous sales pitch, and I realized I was smiling. Actually smiling, not the polite mask I'd been wearing for months. "There he is," Tom said, noticing. There's my friend. Welcome back, man. I've been here the whole time. No, you've been somewhere else, but you're back now. Maybe he was right. Hannah called in May. I'm getting married, she said, her voice bright with happiness. Sarah proposed last night. I said yes. That's wonderful, Hannah. I'm happy for you. Will you walk me down the aisle? I know it's usually Dad's job, but... Our father had died 5 years ago. Heart attack at 62, sudden and shocking. I'd be honored, I said. Thank you. And Rodrik? I'm proud of you. I know I've been worried, but you've handled everything with more grace than I gave you credit for. I just did what I had to do. I know. That's what makes it impressive. The wedding was in August, a small ceremony in Hannah's backyard with maybe 40 guests. I walked her down the makeshift aisle to where Sarah waited, both of them crying happy tears. During the reception, I gave a toast about how Hannah had always been the strong one, the one who held our family together after Dad died, the one who never gave up on people, even when they gave her every reason to. And now she's found someone who sees her the way I've always seen her, I said, raising my glass. As extraordinary. Sarah, you're getting the best person I know take care of her. They kissed while everyone applauded, and I sat down feeling like I'd done something right. Fall came around again, 1 year since everything had started. I took a week off work and drove to the Shenandoah Valley, hiking alone through the mountains. I needed space, distance, time to think without the daily distractions of work and routine. On the third day, standing on a ridge overlooking a valley painted in autumn colors, I finally let myself think about Margaret. Really think about her, not as the antagonist in my story, but as a person who'd made choices that destroyed her life. Had I been too cold, too calculating? Should I have confronted her the night I found out, given her a chance to explain, to apologize, to fix things? But I knew the answer. There was nothing to fix. The marriage had been over long before I installed that camera. Maybe it had been over for years, both of us going through the motions, pretending we were happy when we were really just comfortable. Margaret had chosen to handle it with lies and betrayal. I'd chosen to handle it with evidence and patience. Neither of us were heroes. But only one of us was in prison. I hiked back down the mountain as the sun set. By the time I reached my car, it was dark and the stars were coming out. More stars than I ever saw in Richmond. The sky a blanket of light. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cold air rush through the car, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Work continued. Projects finished, new projects started. The rhythm of deadlines and calculations, problems and solutions, it was good work, meaningful work. Buildings that would stand for decades, bridges that would carry thousands of people safely across rivers and valleys. There was something satisfying about that kind of legacy. Something permanent. In November, almost 2 years after everything began, I was working late at the office when my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Rodrik Hansen? Yes. This is Janet Morrison from the Victim Services Unit. I'm calling to inform you that Margaret Hansen is being released from prison next week. She served her sentence and will be on supervised probation. Per the conditions of her release, she's prohibited from contacting you, but I wanted to give you advance notice. Thank you for letting me know. If she violates the no-contact order, call us immediately. Do you have any questions? No, thank you. I hung up and stared at the structural plans spread across my desk. Margaret was getting out. After 3 years, she'd be free again, free to rebuild her life however she could. I felt nothing. No anxiety, no curiosity, no lingering anger. She was a chapter in my life that had closed a long time ago. That evening, I met Tom for dinner at a steakhouse downtown. He'd gotten engaged to Rachel, and they were planning a summer wedding. Margaret's getting out next week, I mentioned over dinner. Tom's fork paused halfway to his mouth. How do you feel about that? Fine, it doesn't affect me. You sure? I'm sure. She's part of my past. I've moved on. Tom studied me for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I believe you. You seem different now. More relaxed. Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore. I'm not. That's good. You deserve to be happy, Rodrik. You're a decent guy who got stuck with a rough situation, but you handled it flawlessly. I don't know about perfectly. Close enough. We finished dinner and talked about his wedding plans, about work, about Tom's idea to start his own consulting business, normal conversations about normal things, the kind of life I'd wanted all along. Driving home, I realized Tom was right. I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. The anger, the betrayal, the need for justice, all of it had been resolved. Margaret had faced consequences for her actions. I'd protected myself and come out the other side intact. That was all I'd ever wanted. My house was dark when I arrived. I'd left the porch light on, and it cast long shadows across the driveway. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, organized, peaceful. I poured myself a small glass of scotch, the good stuff I saved for special occasions, and sat on the back deck even though it was cold. The stars were out, and the neighborhood was quiet. 3 years ago, I'd watched a video that shattered my marriage. Tonight, I was free. Truly free. No anger, no bitterness, no desire for further revenge. Just peace. I finished my drink and went inside. Tomorrow I had a meeting about the bridge project. Next week, Thanksgiving dinner at Hannah and Sarah's new house. Next month, the company holiday party. Life moving forward, one day at a time, exactly as it should. I turned off the lights and went to bed, sleeping soundly in my own house, in my own life, finally and completely whole again.